Imagine there was a periodic table for human behavior, 35 secret scales with 7 precise levels that quietly govern how you think, choose, and relate to everyone around you. Jim Marshall calls this system Septemics, and today he's unpacking how finding your level can instantly change the way that you see yourself and every person in your life. Let's dive in.
When you find your basic purpose, it is a life-changing moment. You're never the same after that.
This is From Wounds to Wisdom with Barbie Moreno. Real talk, deep healing, and stories that turn pain into power. Let's dive in. So thank you, Jim, for being here. I'm excited to talk about your book, the way that you have changed the way that things are, how we perceive ourselves and how we can change ourselves. So I'm excited to have this talk with you.
Thanks, Barbie. I'm glad to be here.
I feel like there's not like a lot that I can really ask to get you started because you know your work. So if you wouldn't mind just giving it to us.
Well, the first thing I should say to give some context to your viewers is that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I developed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. So Septemics comprises a collection of scales, each of which breaks down some area of human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique. And between them, they span the spectrum of human experience, meaning any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that anybody has that has to do with people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
You basically say in your book, there are some things that are just basically who you are. And then there are traits on these scales of things that you can change. Is that accurate to say?
Well, I would say every person is at some level on every scale. That is within that axis who you are. But there's always the possibility of moving up to the next level.
The first scale is the scale of basic purposes, right?
Right.
And I'm just going to go through the scales a little bit if you don't mind.
Okay.
So the highest part on the scale would be what you call the type as a saint. And the objective of this is to be in transcendence. And basically how this shows up is courage, wisdom, ethics.
Right.
At the very bottom of the scale, so you go 7 levels in each of these, like you said. So 7 levels, the very bottom one would be subversive. And so this is like a negative on the scale. Its objective is basically to be just destructive, right? It's destructive.
Right.
And it shows up as fear, stupidity, criminality, right?
Right.
So the one thing I do love about your book is that it compares people that we know. So it says like this person is currently is on the scale at XYZ. These are the reasons why they would be on the scale. But can you give us kind of how the basic purposes work?
Well, every person has one of 7 basic purposes. When you find your basic purpose, it is a life-changing moment. You're never the same after that. Because what happens is you throw out the other 6, you say, those are for somebody else, this is who I am. And then it's much easier to live. Everything that happens in your life will come into focus with that basic purpose.
If we start off as loser, you say that we can only go up one place on the scale at a time.
That's right.
So we can only move up or down one level.
Exactly.
For somebody to change their basic purpose, not all of the other things, but their basic purpose, is that difficult?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was reading from the book.
It's a very big deal.
Yeah.
And it's clear if you look at the scale, the reason why that is it involves what in Eastern philosophy they call a reversal of polarity. So this has been known for thousands of years that this happens to people. You see somebody and then you see him at a later time and he's completely different. He had a reversal of polarity.
What would usually preempt that change? Do you see things that generally precede a change like that?
Depends on the person. I mean, I can give you specific examples
Mhm.
of people who change levels, but that doesn't really tell you anything regarding anybody else.
Yeah.
What you need to know is you and everybody listening to this is that of these levels, one of these 7 levels on each of these 35 scales. And when you find your level, or you find somebody else's level, like your wife's or your mother's, you
Mhm.
have an insight. Oh, now I see why I couldn't get along with Joe. See?
Right.
And that is an epiphany, and you have already benefited right there because your understanding has improved and your relationship, if it involves a person like that, just got better.
Mhm.
And so
The other
even if that person stays the same, you can deal with them better.
you say it's not linear, right? So somebody who is considered a saint is in some ways can be very close to like subversive, right? And as far as like the way that they kind of maybe show up. And the reason why I say that, for example, is from my understanding of what you wrote, a subversive is somebody who's more like a they can't socialize so much with the world. They are more of somebody who I wouldn't say necessarily a homebody, but basically somebody who is introverted. And then you go into a saint where a saint almost doesn't even need other people around them, right? They just kind of are already transcendent. They don't need all of the lessons that we're going to learn. So is that right to say that that from an outside perspective, one might seem the same as the other?
No, this is
Okay.
a linear scale. In a
It is
linear
a linear.
scale, it just goes in a straight line. You're not going to mistake number 1 for number 7.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a spiral scale,
That's what it was.
which is the alternative, then you have an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a catastrophic mistake. The best example of that is Jesus of Nazareth. He was at level 1,
Mm-hmm.
and they treated him as if he was at level 7.
Right.
And I'm not talking about necessarily this scale, but there's 34 other scales.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a classic mistake of mistaking the best for the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot. So that's why Abraham Lincoln got shot in the head. Gandhi was assassinated.
Right.
So you have these people who are magnificent people at very high levels who people hate and kill.
So I know you said so there's 7 scales, but there's 35 total.
There are 35 scales. Each of them has 7 levels, which is why it's called Septemics.
I wanted to go to chapter 2, which you talk about the scale of personal influence. So
Yes,
you start off at the highest level is telepathy, and then martyrdom is the 7th level, right? So
right,
again, a linear scale, and in between is everything in between.
right.
Um, and so telepathy is like it says will, and then martyrdom is humility. So can you kind of give us what is a scale of personal influence and how that works?
Well, let's talk about what would mean by personal influence. If I
Hmm.
hit you over the head with a club, I would be influencing you, but
Hmm.
that's not what I mean by personal influence. There is, when you interact with someone, that person has some influence on you. And there are 7 ways that can occur. So, for
Hmm.
example, level 2 is charisma.
Right.
Everybody raved about JFK's charisma, Elvis's charisma, and they were right.
Hmm.
They influence people at level 2. There are these 7 levels, and obviously, I don't recommend level 7 because you wind up dead.
On in the martyrdom, the
Right,
humility.
right. That's what Jesus did.
Hmm.
2,000 years later, something like 1.5 billion people are still following him.
So
So
that's
he
interesting,
obviously
right?
had a big influence.
Right.
They wear a crucifix, right?
Hmm.
So they're celebrating his death.
Hmm.
That's how he influenced the world.
Which is interesting because on the basic purposes, he's a 1, a saint. But then in the scale of personal influence, he's a 7.
That's right. That's how he influenced people.
Yeah. It's interesting that there's such a difference between the 2 scales and the way that he would show up, right?
That's right.
And you would think somebody like Jesus would, again, depending on what you believe about him, but that he would be in the world of telepathy, right? Like,
I'm sure he was with some people,
mhm. Okay.
but generally, I've studied Christianity at great length over many years.
Right.
Clearly had an influence. This is embedded in all of their dogma and their literature. He influenced the world by his crucifixion, and it's very, very. that that's how he influenced the world.
Right. And
And
by
it's, and it's even clear from his own words, if you read the gospel, that he's saying that.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean he wasn't using these other levels with people in his life.
Right. It's just how he influenced the population.
Right,
Okay. So chapter 3, you go to the scale of choice, which is a spiral scale. This one's not linear.
right.
And then, so tell us the difference between a linear and spiral.
Okay. In a spiral scale, there is an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7. It's very easy to make the mistake of viewing a person who's at level 7 and thinking they're at 1, or viewing a person at level 1 thinking they're at 7.
Hmm.
Great example of this is Adolf Hitler. The Nazi thought he was the greatest guy in the world. I'm
Right.
not exaggerating this. They believed he was the greatest man in the world. Okay. This was a man who was at level 7 on the
Hmm.
scale of base purposes.
Hmm.
Okay? So, so that's what so obviously they were treating him the way you would treat somebody who was at a very high level.
Hmm.
And the
That,
opposite is also true
right.
for Gandhi, who was at level 1 and was assassinated.
Mhm.
They were treating him as if he were at some very low level, perhaps level 7. See, so that's the danger of a spiral scale.
So the scale of choice. So the level 1 is no choice necessary, transcendence, right? And then you go all the way down to level 7 where it says no choice. So both of them have no choice. But the difference is in level 7 it says possible and oblivion. So you go from transcendence to oblivion, which this is kind of what I was talking about a little bit ago, that these could get mixed up, right? Because the transcendent person doesn't necessarily need all the drama, need all of that different stuff. And then you have the oblivious person who's living on a cloud and they don't see anything that's going on. Is
Right.
it? Yeah. And then in between you have
It's
those.
no choice possible, right? And no choice necessary.
Right. Big difference.
Big difference.
But could show up the same, like if somebody didn't know, they might
Right.
see them and go, oh, they're completely oblivious.
Either uh, at a cursory view where you're not really paying attention, or just a dopey person.
Mm.
You can't see the difference. So that's just that person's level of perception. Or like I went to a polo match once, and the person who took me was an equestrian. And she picked out a particular horse and she said, "Oh, that's a wonderful horse." I have no idea what the hell she was looking at.
Right.
They're all just horses, you
So
know?
you're
I don't
oblivious
know
at that
anything
point.
about that.
Yeah. And so your scale of choice could be different depending on the subject, right? Because you don't know anything about horses, but you're not oblivious to everything.
I wasn't talking about that example as far
Mhm.
as the scale.
Okay.
I was just talking it in terms of people just can't perceive things sometimes.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
can't, they can't, you
Mhm.
know? And
So,
there's lots of that.
right. Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of,
As a very well educated person, I see this go on all the time. I mean, think about this, okay? Half the people in the United States love Donald Trump, and the other half hate his guts. They
very divided.
can't both be right.
Right.
Okay? One of them is wrong. So now I'm not going to give an opinion about who's right and who's wrong. I'm just saying they're looking at the same thing and coming up with a completely different conclusion.
Hmm. And
Right?
that polarity, that's an extremely good example, right? Because it is so divided.
Right. This
Yeah.
goes on all the time with interpersonal relationships.
Mhm. Is there ever a time that you can think of a historical figure who maybe we thought was transcendent and they were oblivious or vice versa?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah.
People at level 7, that's like people in insane asylums,
Hmm.
right? If you go into an insane asylum, those people cannot make a choice.
And so where do you think on the scale of choice, and is it, maybe you can't give me this, but where most people fall on your scale?
There is no most,
Okay.
because first of all, every person is different. And even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you
Mm.
unless it's somebody who's
Who's
deceased.
passed away? Because that is your, yeah, I remember. It's hard
And
to
as far as
continue.
the deceased people, the only reason I give is to illuminate, to help you understand, because most people know George Washington, right?
Right.
So when I tell you he was at level 3 on the scale of basic purposes,
Hmm.
most people are going to say, "Oh, I see," because they kind of know him.
For on a scale of basic purposes, if he was at a level 3, he would be called a type of a, his type would be winner, his
Right.
objective would be wealth. So you believe that George Washington's objective in life was wealth?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
If you study the man, which I have extensively, it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to realize wealth means different things.
Right.
He had hundreds of slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That was wealth in those days,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
Yep. And he's known for in a different way. He's thought of more like going in the way that they teach him in history is more that he's at a higher level on that scale. But really, it was a lot of it was who he was about wealth, about accumulating wealth, holding on to wealth.
It's where he was on this scale. This scale. There's 34 other scales.
Yeah. So interesting. How did you come up with this?
This is a long answer, but I can tell you. The story begins when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I thought at the time I was going to be engineering physical things such as airfoils, motors, electrons, like all the other engineering students thought. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because that is the area of that at least is known about it. It's the area of greatest mystery. And more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people. And this is the main problem that people have. To make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, where I brought engineering skills, engineering tactics, engineering strategies, engineering devices to help my clients to attain higher levels of wisdom, ethics, enlightenment, responsibility, et cetera, depending on what the person wanted. Incidentally, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. In 1995, I had simply observed and recorded about 32 scales. I would simply see that the person was at this level. I'd work with him and he would go up to the next level on that scale. Now, the reason that that was scientifically important is that they had no idea what I was doing, how I was doing it, what I was using, what my techniques were. They had no idea. All the clients knew is the company would say, Jim, I got a drinking problem. Can you help me? I say, sure. And I help them, see? And then they're very happy and they go away. So they have no idea that what I'm doing, what I was thinking. And I use devices where I would measure biofeedback on them. They had no idea what I was looking for. It's very complicated. Reading the biofeedback on a living person as he's talking.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to do it and I noticed it and it gave me a fast way to help the person because basically what I was doing is Socratic dialogue. Now, if you've read the Socratic dialogues, of which there are many, written by his student Plato, the whole idea is that Socrates would have a conversation with somebody and he would not tell him anything. He would bring the person to enlightenment. So he would say to the guy, what is ethics? The guy couldn't answer the question. Now, when he did answer the question, Socrates would say, yeah, but what about this? And he would say, oh, I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end, the guy would have an epiphany. Now, the only difference between what Socrates was doing and what I was doing is that the biofeedback made it orders of magnitude faster and easier. Because guy comes into me, he says, I'm having trouble with my marriage, would you help me? Sure. So I interview this guy with the biofeedback. See, he has no idea, but I'm getting this meter is telling me things, that I'm noting them. So, and I'll get everything under the sun, like how do you get along with your boss? How do you get along with your father? How do you get along with your dog, et cetera? It's right. You can imagine this goes on for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and he would have specific actions on the biofeedback and I note them. I did this for a long time and I got such consistently good results in such a period of time. This is like orders of magnitude faster than anything that any therapist can do because of the biofeedback.
So the understanding or the realization of these things is what pushed them to the next level on the scale.
Yes.
They didn't need to work on neurological pathways and all of these different things. It was just simply understanding oh, the reason why I understand why I don't get along with women, boof, I can go out and date now. It was that easy.
Yep.
So why do we have all of this stuff going on that people make people go through all of these years of therapy and they do all of this stuff and they're doing TMS and they're doing EMDR and they're doing ayahuasca and they're doing ketamine and they're doing all of these various different things if your system works like this.
I'm,
Yeah,
and I don't have $1 million to spend on promotion because I spent my life helping people.
it's just
So
sad that that's
they,
that.
they,
Yeah,
they
they don't know.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I studied the other 31 scales, and in a short period of time, each of them developed into a 7-level scale. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 scales, all about human phenomena, all of which had 7 levels, all of which had math embedded in them. And I said to myself, having gone to school for 28 years, I said, this looks like a new subject to me because I never saw anything like this before. So then I thought, wait a minute, I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out so everybody can have it.
Mm.
So I'm going to have to write a book. So the first draft of the book was finished in December of 95. And I immediately sent it to colleagues of mine, each of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all loved it. They had differing responses, but distinctly positive responses. And that told me that this is exactly what I thought it was, which is a subject that people would get.
Yeah.
And the reason they get it is it's natural law.
How'd
And
you go from 32 to 35?
while I was writing the book, which began in 95, as you know, I was still doing work and I discovered 3 more. I just included them in.
Before we go on to that, why did you want to help people?
I was born that way.
You just did people as a child and you're like, I can help this?
Well, if you take a look at the scale of basic purposes,
Mm-hmm.
how would a person behave if he was at certain levels? That's not hard to figure out.
If you don't mind, let's go into I'm an average person. I have reoccurring themes in my life that I want to change. And I pick up your book. Now, understand that as an average person, I would still say that the average person would have a hard time comprehending it.
All right. So let me clarify that for you. There are 12 axioms of Septemics. They're on
Mm-hmm.
the website if you want to see them. One of the axioms is when a person is high on any scale, it's because he's insightful in that area. And when a person is low on any scale, it's because he lacks insight in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So if a person lacks insight in a certain area and you show him the scale, it's just going to be gobbledygook to him.
Right, right.
But if a person is high in that scale, he's going to look, oh, I see.
Different scale.
And a perfect example of this is Bill Clinton. Everybody knows, who's been paying attention for 35 years, that he's a brilliant person.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Rhodes Scholar. Listen to him speak. He's a smart, even his opponents and his enemies admit how smart he is.
Yeah.
But also equally well known is the fact that he's a serial abuser of women,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you go to the scale of human ability in his profession, he is very high in that scale. I'm not giving any levels.
Right,
But if you go to the scale of sexuality, he's got to be near the bottom.
right.
So all these women sued him. You see?
If he was looking at your book, though, you feel he would understand those scales better than maybe other scales?
Well, in general, people understand certain skills better than others, and it's because of the person. And the main factor is the one that I just told you, which is how high is the person on that scale?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you take a guy who's a drug dealer, an addict, and a wife beater, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is at or near the bottom of all of these skills.
Right.
That's why he's like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to read this book.
Right.
But even if he did read the book, he wouldn't understand it.
Touche. Just even by saying the fact that he wouldn't read the book, it just kind of answers my question, right? Like only people who are going to want to understand this about themselves and the world and their relationships would be reading this book.
Right.
Could somebody use these scales to manipulate other people?
The short answer is no, and I'll tell you why. This book is for anyone who can read English reasonably well and wants to improve himself or others. Anyone who wants to improve himself or others is not going to be into manipulating people. The people who want to manipulate people, like Joseph Goebbels, Hitler, his whole job was to manipulate people, right? He's not a potential septemicist because he was not about helping himself or helping others, all right? He was about manipulating people. So what we know is there are all kinds of groups of people who are not going to use septemics, psychopaths, sociopaths, serial murderers, corrupt politicians, ignoramuses, morons. There's lots of groups of people who, if they do bother to read the book, won't understand it at all. And in some cases, even if they do understand it, they won't apply it because it's contrary to their way of life. This is about uplifting people. Do you think the Nazis were about uplifting people? Obviously not.
Yeah, they would have burned your book. Would somebody reading the book move them up? Just the mere fact that they read the book move them up on any of the scales?
What happened?
Yeah, I would imagine so, right? Because like you said with that person, once they got the knowledge that they, the way that they perceived women or whatever the case may be, it then allowed them to go date that guy, that story that you gave in the beginning, right? Just the simple knowledge sometimes helps people move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes a guy reads and says, oh, I see. I'm right here. I'm at level 3. Explains me exactly. See, that's a type of enlightenment that he gets. He is now a smarter person. And that smartness carries forward into everything else he does in his life. So what you get with this book is a virtuous cycle where the more you use it, the smarter you get. The smarter you get, the easier you use, the more you use it, and the more you use it, the smarter you get. So the sky is the limit. If you live 1,000 years, you will still be using this book.
So the conspiracy theorist in me would be that the big they, wouldn't people have this knowledge because the more you know about yourself, the better you become, the more knowledgeable you become, the less you can be controlled.
I say that in the book.
Okay. So I love that.
I say in the book, I'm very glad it killed me yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, yeah, exactly. Okay. I believe when we spoke, I asked if people could work with you, but you said most people have to work with you physically because of the biometrics. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. So me living and you living where you live, you and I could not work together because I can't physically, unless I go travel to you, be on your biometric machine.
Or I could travel to you.
One more question before we go, if you don't mind. Do you believe in that we're all primarily vibrational energy beings?
I have no beliefs. Belief is only necessary when knowledge is absent. The reason I went to school for 28 years and meditated for 40 years is to get knowledge. So I don't have to believe in anything. In other words, it's about perception.
Yeah.
There's a scale of belief, and I talk about this in there. That scale is very specific as it goes from belief down to disbelief. Disbelief is really nutty. I mean, you cannot convince that person of anything because they're in disbelief. Doesn't matter what you say, they don't believe it.
You're an interesting human. I'm sure that you know this in many different ways. I love it. I think that you have a very gifted mind. I'm grateful for one, for you coming on, obviously, because then people can use this book to better themselves in their life. I guess better is not a good word for it, but that's kind of what I'm going to say.
Better is good.
Yeah.
I like better.
Okay. And I will give everybody your information on how to find you. But can you just give us a brief summary if somebody's interested in you? I know you've been on a ridiculous amount of podcasts. How can they learn more?
I would invite your viewers to my website, which is septemics.com, where you can see what many readers have said, what many journalists have written. You can read sections of the book itself. You can read the reviews. And you can even listen to, if you wish, a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics that explains it to you in 15 minutes.
Love that. I think that would be great for people to do. This is a book that you sit down and put on your nightstand and you read when you have an extra few minutes. For those that are watching, like in my book, I have all these like printouts of stuff where I'm writing down my things so that I can compare things and this, and that. Like this is more academic kind of thing. You need to really put the effort into it if you want to see and understand and get the results.
What I tell everybody is this is a textbook on an entirely new subject.
Mm-hmm.
So study it the way you would study a chemistry text, a physics text, a biology text, a math text. Never go past anything. Use the glossaries, use the dictionary, talk to people. Don't go past anything that you don't understand. And when you get to the end, then come back to the beginning, read it again, and find your level on every scale.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you will be, by the time you finish, you will be a new person.
Yeah. And that's what I've learned. Like that I'm gonna have to go back through this, right? Because like it was like a foreign language and I read it for the first time or read it for the first time, right? Kind of understand what we're talking about now. I'm gonna have to go back and look at it again and
Right.
reevaluate based on that. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. I appreciate you. And we thank you for coming on. And again, as I go through the process, I'm sure that I would like to have you back.
Okay. I'll be glad to come back.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. If this story spoke to you, let's keep the healing going. Visit barbiemoreno.com for my online course, Awakening Your Worth in Healing Energy sessions, one-on-one coaching, and your free healing guide. Your next step is waiting.